Who is the wide receiver one in the 2026 NFL draft? That is the big question. We just got done talking about who the running back two was on the Draft Rankings YouTube channel and podcast, but you can go find that series on the YouTube channel. They're under the playlists. We went through all the running backs, whether it was Jonah Coleman, Mike Washington, Jadarian Price, Nick Singleton, you name it. We went through them. Now we're going to find out who that wide receiver one is, because that is starting to become a bigger question. Whether you're on Team Carnell Tate or Team Makai Lemon or Team Jordan Tyson, or if you want that sleeper in that Casey Concepcion because you see some Antonio Brown and some Stephon Diggs in his game. We're going to talk about all those guys over the course of the next couple of weeks as we get closer to the NFL draft, which is just under 6 weeks away in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We'll be there live, boots on the ground. Please click that like button. Please click subscribe. We're here every single night, 7 p.m. Eastern time during the weeknights and on podcast the next day. Today, we're going to talk about Carnell Tate, the wide receiver from Ohio State, who came into the NFL Combine at 6'2", 2/8, so 1/4, 192 pounds, over 10-inch hands, which is great to see because he's the only one in this group with bigger than 10-inch hands. Everybody else is around that 9 and 8, 8 and 6/8. Denzel Boston came in with near 10-inch, but not quite. So the biggest hands by a wide margin were up in the triple XLs like DeAndre Hopkins with 10.25-inch hands. The longest wingspan amongst this group, 78 inches. Carnell Tate put it all on the field last year for Ohio State. The biggest question mark off the top that a bunch of people have had that I've talked to is, can he be an alpha? Can he be the guy in an offense? And I guess that is where the alpha beta, the beta alpha conversation comes in, whether you believe that a Carnell Tate can be sort of that DeAndre Hopkins, or what we saw to George Pickens in 2025 when there was no CeeDee Lamb, or if you believe that he's going to fit better in an offense like a T. Higgins or a Michael Pittman, where he's going to play better with an alpha target share opposing him. We saw that the last couple of years at Ohio State with Jeremiah Smith. That's why the question arises, because he's been playing with Jeremiah Smith. Can he be the alpha of that offense? Well, it just happens to be that Jeremiah Smith is a Greek god. He is the Julio of this next generation of wide receivers that people are going to look back on and say, ugh. And everyone attached to him, including Carnell Tate and the Emeka Egbuka and so on and so forth from Ohio State, kind of rep the benefits of playing alongside him. He also played with the Emeka Egbuka last year and did not have the most output on that profile in 2024. He did, however, finish first in the class of 2026 amongst yards per route run, 3.35. That's first amongst all players that were in the Power 4. Bryce Lance was 3.57, but he was in the FCS. Makai Lemon was 3.13. Casey Concepcion, 2.71 among that top group. Carnell Tate was responsible for 23% of his team's total production in 2025, despite playing with Jeremiah Smith. He did have 9 touchdowns, 840 yards. The comps that we've come to, I came to George Pickens. George Pickens was my favorite comp because I don't think that speed is generally his game. He ran the 4.53 at the NFL Combine. There was just reports of so-and-so has him at 4.42, 4.47, 4.48, 4.43, all these different things that came up from scouts. But that's the genesis of scout hand times. They're fine, and every team has their own time. And then you have the electric time from the Combine. But this is why where I used to work at Player Profiler, that's why we always put the 0.05 on top of the hand time, because hand times are generally a reaction short, no matter what you are. Like, yes, you can is it possible to be nails with what the electronic time is? Yes. But generally, on average, you're 0.05 short. So we always add that to pro day time. So Carnell Tate goes out and runs a 4.48 at his pro day. That correlates to a 4.53 electric time. That's why we did that. The problem is I don't care about the 4.53. The 4.53 doesn't matter. You know, Devontae Adams, Cooper Kupp, DeAndre Hopkins, guys of that ilk ran in the 4.5s and the 4.6s. And when I look at the miles per hour on the 40-yard dash, which I think can have a little bit more of a tell to what this player can be. Like we saw Adonai Mitchell, who we saw during the games a couple of years ago at Texas. We're like, oh, this guy's not that fast. He's probably a 4.55 guy. Runs a 4.38. Well, he said, I don't run that fast during the games because that's just not how I play. Carnell Tate, on the inverse, doesn't seem like he's a 4.53 guy on wax. He feels like he feels like a little quicker than that when he's actually playing football. You look at the miles per hour, he runs 22.68, which is just shy of Omar Cooper, who ran 22.78, who ran a 4.42. You can also look at guys like Bryce Lance, who ran a 4.34. His miles per hour, 22.73. Carnell Tate, 22.68. Zachariah Branch, 22.75. He ran a 4.35. Like, these are significantly faster 40 times, but very, very similar 40 mile per hour times. Crest Brazel, the long wide receiver, 6'4", 190 pounds, 198 pounds from Tennessee, who ran a 4.37. His mile per hour, 22.59. So that is slower than Carnell Tate. Jeff Caldwell from Cincinnati, 4.3, 140, 22.72. So you get where I'm going here is like the 40 doesn't really matter. Like, the mile per hour is enough for me. And we know a lot of teams are going to the GPS model, are going to that and saying, like, that's good enough. I mean, as long as, here's the outlier. Malachi Fields, who runs a 4.61, 21.85 miles per hour. He was the slowest among all the wide receivers that ran at the NFL Combine by a margin. The next slowest mile per hour, which is kind of bizarre, was Chris Brazel from Tennessee, 22.59. That's up from 21.85 miles per hour. So hitting that 22 mile an hour threshold is big, and Tate was all the way into it. So anyways, away from the speed talk, which is not that big of a proponent to this conversation, he broke out at age 20.6 at Ohio State. I think Carnell Tate, for me, has been the wide receiver one. I don't think he has been. That's just what he is. He dealt with a calf strain this last year. I think he's going to be in this conversation till the very end, and he might still be the top wide receiver off the draft board right now. When you're looking at the mock draft database and landing spots and stuff, like, it's him that's getting mocked to the Giants and Cleveland Browns at times to fit in there. It's him that's getting mocked to the Washington Commanders and the New Orleans Saints at times. Like, he's the one that I feel best about landing inside the top 10 of the NFL draft. And that's where I would mock him as well. Elite body control. He was 12th overall in college football last year in yards per out run, like we talked about a second ago. 0 drops in 2025. 35 of his 51 receptions went for first downs. He was the highest rated pass catcher when targeted in college football with 151.8 passer rating. Long levers. He's a polished wide receiver that you may project and want to be your X, but you know he can be a very, 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 very viable number 2 flanker on the outside. Soft hands, great at the catch point, adjusts very well, separates downfield. Does he lack that true vertical speed? Sure, yes, he does, but he can separate inside of those routes. He makes touchdown catches down the field. That's just like the difference. It's like, yeah, he doesn't have Xavier Worthy or Brashad Perriman, straight line speed, but he still does catch those passes downfield. I think he averaged 32.5 yards per receiving touchdown in 2025. So it's not like he can't do that. One of my favorite things, I guess, about Carnell Tate is the fact that he stayed at Ohio State, pushed through playing with guys year after year after year that got drafted in round 1. And like, yeah, you may say, like, well, why would he ever leave? It's like, well, maybe he at some point questioned whether he was ever going to get the opportunity to be the number 1 guy. You saw Meke Buka come out last year and go to Tampa, but everybody knew and saw who Jeremiah Smith was 2 years ago. How was he to just say, I'm going to depend on Julian Sayin. I'm going to depend on him to get me some as well as Jeremiah Smith? Well, a national championship helps. I think Carnell Tate has his name ingrained in the top 2 of this conversation. There's a couple of other guys I want to talk about, and we're going to talk about them in the next coming weeks, but I think Carnell Tate's going to have a very tough bull case to be the number 1 wide receiver in the 2026 NFL draft class, be the number 1 wide receiver drafted, and I think he's going to be number 1 on my list when it comes down to the final bell and it tolls.